Spinwatch on corporate lobbying. Tamsin.
But then I have colleagues who do the dirty industries, fracking, oil, mag, that kind of stuff. So, looking at different lobbies. I'm going to give the book a plug, just to start with. Becky's done it already, but you'll find a lot of more depth in a book I co-wrote with a colleague of mine called A Quiet Word, which is subtitled Lobbying, Crony Capitalism and Broken Politics in Britain. Came out in paperback earlier this year.
What did Jordan Monbiot say about it?
He said it was indispensable or something, didn't he? Bless him. Yeah, that was the nicest review we got. So it's a good place to be to talk about corporate lobbying because we're surrounded by them. It looks like we're in the centre of our democracy. We're actually in the middle of a £2 billion corporate lobbying industry.
Okay.
Yeah? Cut away all the old buildings, just ground them for a minute, and you have the offices of some serious influences in our politics around here. I'm going to start by just a very basic, what is lobbying? You will all probably know. Lobbying is any act that attempts to influence the decisions of our government. So when I write to my MP, not that I do that much, but if I did, I would be lobbying, and it is a democratic right. We all have the right to lobby, and we expect our politicians to listen to us, and for that to somehow, well, if they don't do what we want, then at least they've got to take on board what we say. So that's lobbying. The problem comes, and this is why it can be subverted, and it's not really anything to do with democracy. It's been totally hijacked by people who are paid to lobby for corporate interests. And so they have by far the loudest voice in our politics. And it's quite shocking when you start looking at some of the players involved. The key thing that they all have in common is that they have access to that street there, which is Whitehall and Parliament here. So they either come from this building, very often come from that building, or they know the people who work in them. Because it's not all about access. Commercial lobbyists will say, oh, it's not all about my Rolodex. Well, it's not. But you basically can't influence shit until you've got your foot in the door. It's like you only can cook up deals once you're in the kitchen, and we only ever see front of house, basically, and that's how it goes. So, you need access. So that's what they've all got in common. So when the election's over, you will see a lot of the former MPs, the people who got booted out, who are retiring, moving into the lobbying industry. Anybody who's ever done photocopying for George Osborne will find a job in the lobbying industry. It's full of PR people who used to work in journalism, people with contacts, and who really understand how this place works, because it is very difficult sometimes to work out how legislation is actually put together.
$2 billion figure covers, is that the UK lobbying industry?
That's the UK lobbying industry. There are three big industries in the world. Washington, far outstrips us. Then you've got Brussels and
Messing around, are you?
Lobbying industry.
Messing around.
It's a little bit finger in the wind, the £2 billion figure. It comes from the Household Society. We haven't got any idea. That's the thing, we've got no idea how much it's worth, if you take, here's a good statistic. In the States, they know how much they spend on lobbying, right? Because they have a register of lobbyists, and it's not very, it's a way of showing who is lobbying whom and about what, and they have to declare how much they're spending. Pfizer spends something like $80 million in the last 6 years or something ridiculous. Figures like that. And has this huge army of pharmaceutical lobbyists. Now, we have a register of lobbyists that's just been launched in this country. Pfizer's not on it, right? So we have no idea what they're doing. We know that they have, they employ 10 lobbying firms in this country. Above and beyond that, we have no idea. So anyway,
good guys. The lobbyists are burning down.
Yeah. You see, but the firemen, they've got people lobbying against them. And that's what you've got to remember. When us lot go home, they don't, because they're paid to stay here. That's the thing. They're paid to stay here 24/7, 365 days a year. So a quick rundown of who is here. You've got the in-house corporate lobbyists. They're the main bunch. They make up the numbers. Looking at some of the buildings just over the river, you've got Shell. I mean, they've got a small army of lobbyists there. You've got VAT, the tobacco company, just up the road. Victoria Street, which runs from here to Victoria Station. Huge amount of corporate lobbying offices there. So you will find the offices of Microsoft, for example, but they would have a huge team there. Pfizer's up there. And they're the in-house corporate lobbyists. Then you've got the lobbyists for hire. They work in agencies, a lot of them work in PR agencies, and there is a strip which basically is a little bit further away. It runs from the sort of ropey end of Oxford Street to the edge of the city, to Chancery Lane, and that's where all the big ones are, the Hill and Knowles, the Burson Mostellers, the other ones. Popular ones at the moment, Hanover, Portland, but I mean, these are the ones, the hired guns. So if you want to give your campaign an extra oomph, you get this lot, because you've got people like Alistair Campbell working in there. You've got, you know, I mean, like Michael Portello advises a couple of them. You know, they're all people with lots and lots of people with political connections. Then you've got the business lobby groups. You've got the Institute of Directors up on Pall Mall, which is whichever way up there, over there, somewhere. Pall Mall over there.
Oh, that was spotted the other week, the Institute of Directors, the empty one, yeah.
I can think of worst place to spot it.
Yeah, young crew.
Quite a nice cup of tea there.
Yeah, lots of, exactly. Lots of
so you've got business lobby groups, you've got the trade industry associations, you've got, for example, the Association of British Pharmaceutical Industry, which its offices are right at the top of Victoria Street up here, and they actually sit on top of the custodians of the NHS budget. So the NHS England, their offices are halfway up there, and you've got the Association of British Pharmaceutical Industry sits on top of their offices in the same building. Sandwiched in between is a lobbying agency called Edelman, which also has a huge healthcare lobbying practice. So you've got the ABPI, you've got Pharma Lobby, you've got the lobbyists for hire, and then you've got NHS England, which holds the 10 billion pound NHS budget. It's all very cosy if they want to have meetings. They don't even have to leave the building. It's great. And then of course you've got the think tanks.
Who was there first? Who was there first, the lobbyists or the NHS?
Well, it's definitely the NHS, because the ABPI used to be at the top of Whitehall, and they had a very nice building up there. And then they moved when it became NHS England to just
isn't that a coincidence?
You've got a couple of financiers around here as well, people who invest in chips. So you've got a company up there called Sovereign Capital, I think it's called, which is run by a guy called Lord Nash. I'm going to get this right, John Nash, who is now Education Minister, but his firm is a big kind of investor in private education companies and private health companies and the like, and they're just halfway up there. So I mean, like, literally the place is surrounded, but what you've really got here is the think tanks. Now they're thought to be nice, independent thinking places, whatever. Many of them are disguised, they're corporate lobbyists in disguise. I was told by a lobbyist not long ago, you know, they basically perform the same function as a lobbying agency, they're just more expensive. So if you're a corporate entity, you will hire a lobbyist, think tank, and they will do the legwork for you. And there are many of them around here. Just behind this building here is the Policy Exchange, big free market think tank, said to be Cameron's favourite think tank. Lots and lots of political connections. Done a lot of things like free schools and NHS privatisation. Just down the road is one of the sort of granddaddies of it, the Adam Smith Institute. They basically want to privatise everything. Then you have got the granddaddy of the lot, which is the Institute of Economic Affairs, which is just slightly further down the road. They take money off the tobacco companies and hate any regulation on anything that's bad for you. And then, yeah, people like Reform, which is again another big free market, a lot of outsourcing. They'd like to see the whole lot outsourced, down that. So that gives you an idea. Oh, there's one lot I haven't mentioned, which are the lawyers and the management consultants and the accountancy firms, and they're at it too. They're all basically lobbyists for hire. You've got Ernst & Young, which is just across the river, huge office there. Also, you know, I mean, they do so much work in Whitehall as well for the government. Yeah, but they are paid lobbyists for people like Prudential, you know, the health insurance. So you've got them. You've got McKinsey's offices are just up there in just off Piccadilly. Again, KPMG down there, PwC. I mean, I think the important thing to remember is that lobbyists aren't parasitical to our system. They are not on the outside looking in. They are embedded. That's what I'm trying to say with the geography. And this whole place runs. This is our government here, and it incorporates a lot of the corporate lobbyists, because you get people like McKinsey designing health policy, PwC advising the government on tax laws and blah blah blah. And what they do is they subsidise our government. You know, they sort of de-privilege the civil service, and they replace it with a management consultants a lot of time. So it's very difficult sometimes to see the distinction between corporate lobbyist and government advisor, and certainly it's very difficult to prove that they are working for both sides at the same time, which is quite difficult. So anyway, so they are embedded in our political system here, and yeah, they're here all the time. So that's basically who they are, and they got really good content. And then just quickly, I'm going to talk about what they do. So I mean, the key thing is that they have access to people who make decisions, and that's everybody from, you know, ministers and permanent secretaries to junior civil servants and special advisors. They're very, very useful for lobbyists. So their big thing is that they can open doors to people making decisions. But they do an awful lot else besides. Key among them is, I'm going to say this nicely, they spin the media. But they spin the media, so an awful lot. I mean, I don't need to tell you, not an awful lot of what you read comes straight out of corporate lobbyists' press releases and chats that they've had with them.
Would you not necessarily put the media as part of that architecture? Because I mean, certainly Thatcherism and the Telegraph people and the lobbyists were all like having to be.
I think the point I'm trying to make is that there is, if I talk about how lobbyists work, and this is sort of I find it a useful framework, is that people see it as this kind of great big beast that you can't do anything about, and it's quite useful to know exactly how they work. It's like building a bridge. You need certain things in place. You need money. You need people with know-how. You need certain skills. Influence is constructed like anything else, and so if you can see how it's constructed, it becomes actually less.
Yeah, you can deconstruct it.
You can deconstruct it, and people don't buy the government spin when they can see how it's done. And if you know that think tanks are paid corporate lobbyists, then people stop listening to them, or people start questioning why the BBC never says, the Institute of Economic Affairs funded by the tobacco industry. These things get more traction, and they become less powerful as lobbyists. So how they work, they have access, they use the media, but interestingly, there are two key ways that they use the media. One is to obviously get their messages across to our politicians and to the public, because you have to keep the public on side. But as a bigger part of their job is actually to keep messages out of the media, keep stories that they don't want in the media, keep them out of the media. So they spend basically half of their time keeping shit that they don't want us to read out of the media. Because it's true to say that lobbying is kind of best done, it's most effective. This is actually a quote from a lobbyist who works for McKinsey now. Lobbying is best done, is most effective when it's done behind closed doors. You've got much more room to manoeuvre if you haven't got an audience. You can do deals if nobody's sitting on your shoulder going, hang on a minute, you said you weren't going to do that. So you need to kind of think about the fact that they are shoving a lot of stuff into our press, but also keeping a lot of stuff out. So there was a great example of this a while ago, which was the crop protection association, which is aka the pesticide industry. They were threatened by a pesticides tax. Labour was getting all kind of quite good on pesticides, and there was quite a lot of public support for a clampdown on the liberal use of pesticides. The archers were talking about pesticides use, so there was a lot of support to do something about it. So there was this, they proposed a tax, and the Crop Protection Association weren't that keen on this. So their strategy, they got hold of a lobbying firm called Hill and Knowlton, which has done an awful lot of work for tobacco over the last 50, 60 years. No, I don't know, it's lung cancer. I might retract that. No, they weren't involved. Anyway, they were definitely involved. So they were hired, and part of the strategy was to avoid public debate in the media.